Ever bought grapes at the store and thought, there has to be a better way? Maybe you've tried growing them before, but ended up with a tangled mass of vines that never produced much fruit. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Grapes are one of the easiest fruits to propagate, and once you understand the simple process, you can create an endless supply of vines from just a single plant. I'm about to walk you through the complete process of growing grapes. This isn't just about a one-time harvest, it's about establishing a plant that can produce fruit for 50 years or more. Today, we cover everything from selecting the right variety for your climate to the 2 non-negotiable secrets of pruning and structure in the simple, free trick that lets you multiply your grapevines year after year. Plus, stick around to the very end where I'll show you a propagation trick called callousing that can significantly boost your success rate. Let's get started. Segment 1, the grape secret, 50 years of free fruit. Grapes are one of the most rewarding fruits you can grow. They're incredibly versatile. You can eat them fresh, turn them into juice, make jelly, or even dry them into raisins. And here's what makes them so special. Once you get a vine established and learn a few key techniques, you'll be harvesting grapes for decades. I'm talking about 50 years or more from a single plant. The basic rule that changes everything. Grapes produce fruit only on 1-year-old wood. Let me say that again, because this is the single most important thing you need to understand. The canes that grew last summer are the ones that will produce your grapes this summer. This one rule dictates everything about how you prune and train your vines. Get this right, and you'll have abundant harvests. Ignore it, and you'll wonder why your massive vine produces barely any fruit. The essentials. Grapes need full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight per day, and they prefer well-drained soil. They're surprisingly cold-hardy once established, with some varieties surviving winters down to -20 or even -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Segment 2, variety selection, the first decision that determines your success. Choosing the right grape for your region is absolutely critical, and honestly, this is where a lot of beginners struggle. 1. American grapes, the cold warriors. If you live anywhere with serious winters, these are your friends. Examples include Concord, Catawba, and Niagara. These are incredibly cold-hardy, typically thriving in USDA zones 4 through 8. They have that classic, bold, sweet grape flavor you probably remember from grape juice and jelly, that deep, almost musky sweetness that just screams grape. If you live in the northern half of the country, where winters get brutal, American grapes are your best bet. And honestly, they're some of the easiest to grow. 2. European grapes. These are your Thompsons, your Flames, your wine varieties like Cabernet. They need warmer climates and longer growing seasons, generally zones 7 through 10. They're less tolerant of humidity and more susceptible to fungal diseases. If you live in California, the Southwest, or parts of the Pacific Northwest with those long, dry summers, European grapes can produce absolutely stunning fruit. 3. Muscadine grapes, the southern heat lovers. If you're in the deep south and you've struggled with other grape types, muscadines are about to change your life. Varieties like Carlos, Noble, and Scuppernong are native to the southeastern United States, thriving in zones 7 through 9. They actually need the heat and humidity that would destroy other grape types. They have a unique flavor, sweeter, with a musky quality and thicker skins, but once you develop a taste for them, they're addictive. Segment 3, the multiplication secret. Creating unlimited vines for free. Here's where things get really exciting and where you can save yourself hundreds of dollars. Once you have one grapevine, you can create as many new plants as you want through propagation. Grapes root incredibly easily from cuttings. This is how commercial vineyards have multiplied their vines for centuries, and there's no reason you can't do the same thing in your backyard. When to take cuttings. The best time is during the dormant season, late fall through early spring, after the leaves have dropped but before new growth begins. What to look for? You want healthy, pencil-thick canes from the previous year's growth. They'll be smooth and tan or brown in color. The cutting method. Cut sections about 12 to 18 inches long. Make sure each cutting has at least 3 or 4 nodes, those little bumps where buds are located. Make the bottom cut just below a node at a slight angle. Make the top cut about an inch above a node straight across. That angled bottom cut is actually a clever trick. It helps you remember which end goes down when you plant them weeks or months later. Rooting options. You've got two main approaches. Outdoor method, plant them directly in the ground in early spring. Dig a narrow trench about 8 inches deep, stick the cuttings in with just the top bud showing above the soil, and keep them watered consistently. Indoor method for a faster start. Root cuttings indoors in late winter using tall pots filled with a mix of potting soil and perlite. Here's a game-changing hack. Place your containers on a seedling heat mat and keep the soil temperature around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. This warmth encourages root development while the cooler air temperature keeps the top growth in check. It's like giving your cuttings the perfect environment to focus on what matters, building roots.
Segment 4. Building the structure. Why training is everything.
I'm gonna be honest with you, without proper support and training, even the best grapevine becomes an unmanageable jungle that produces far less fruit than it should. I've seen beautiful, vigorous vines that should be producing 20 pounds of grapes, giving maybe 3 or 4 pounds, simply because they were never trained properly. Site selection. Full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day, and good air circulation to prevent fungal diseases. This is non-negotiable. Soil requirements. Grapes prefer well-drained soil with a pH between 6 and 6.5. They absolutely cannot handle soggy roots. If your soil is heavy clay, consider planting on a slope or building a raised bed. Spacing. Space your vines about 6 to 10 feet apart depending on your training system. Give them room to breathe. The first 2 years, the foundation period. This is critical, so listen carefully. Your main goal in the first 2 years is root development, not fruit production. I know it's tempting to let those flowers develop into grapes, but resist. Pinch off any flower clusters that form so the vine puts all its energy into building a strong, deep root system. Year 1, focus on growing one strong, straight trunk. That's it, just one vertical leader. Year 2, let that trunk grow up to your top wire or the top of your arbor, then pinch the tip to encourage branching. Select 2 to 4 of the strongest branches to become your permanent arms. Training systems. 4-arm niffin. This is a simple, effective 2-wire trellis. One wire at about 3 feet high, another at about 6 feet high. You train 4 main arms along those wires. It's clean, efficient, and makes pruning straightforward. Arbor or pergola. This creates a beautiful shaded structure that transforms your outdoor space, and it makes harvesting incredibly easy since the grape clusters hang down at eye level. You establish a strong main trunk, then train permanent arms along the overhead beams. Segment 5. The maintenance triangle. 3 keys to abundant harvests. Once your vine structure is established, ongoing care becomes surprisingly straightforward. It comes down to 3 things. Watering, deep and infrequent. Established grapevines are surprisingly drought-tolerant. However, consistent water during the growing season will give you bigger, juicier grapes. Water your vines deeply once a week during dry spells, about 5 gallons per plant. The key is deep, infrequent watering that encourages roots to grow down deep, rather than shallow, frequent watering that keeps roots near the surface where they're vulnerable. Fertilizing. Less is actually more. Here's something that surprises people. Grapes are not heavy feeders. In fact, too much nitrogen actually causes problems. You get lots of beautiful leafy growth, but poor fruit production. Apply a balanced fertilizer, like a 10-10-10, once in early spring as the buds start to swell. That's usually all you need. If your soil is particularly poor, you can add a second light application right after fruit set, but that's rarely necessary. Pruning, the most important thing you'll do. Okay, deep breath. Pruning is where most people get nervous, but it's the single most important thing you can do for consistent grape production. The 90% rule. You need to remove 80 to 90% of last year's growth each winter. Yes, you read that right, 80 to 90%.
The first time you do this, it will feel absolutely brutal. You'll look at that massive pile of cuttings on the ground and think, I've killed my vine. You haven't. You've just given it permission to produce an abundance of fruit. When to prune? Late winter, after the coldest weather is past, but before the buds start to swell. The method: select 4 healthy canes from last year's growth for a niffin system and remove everything else. Each cane you keep should have about 10 to 15 buds. Segment 6: Troubleshooting and Harvesting. Let's talk about the problems you might face, and more importantly, how to fix them. Common problems. Powdery mildew, the most common grape disease. It appears as a white, powdery coating on leaves and can spread to the fruit. The fix: ensure proper pruning for air circulation and spray with a sulfur-based fungicide if needed. Black rot. This fungal disease causes grapes to turn brown, shrivel up, and become little mummies on the vine. The fix: sanitation is critical. Remove and destroy all infected material. Don't compost it. Spray with a copper-based fungicide as a preventative. Birds. Once your grapes start ripening, birds will find them. The only reliable solution is netting. Drape bird netting over your vines about 2 weeks before harvest. Harvesting, the reward for all your work. The taste test. You cannot rely on color alone. Grapes change color weeks before they're fully ripe. The best way to know? Taste them. The ripening trick. Grapes ripen from the top of the cluster down, so if the bottom grapes are sweet and flavorful, the whole cluster is ready. How to cut. Use sharp scissors or pruning shears to cut the entire cluster from the vine. Try not to handle the grapes themselves too much. You'll rub off the natural waxy coating called bloom that helps preserve them. The yield. A mature grapevine can produce 15 to 20 pounds of fruit per year. That's a lot of grapes from one plant. Bonus: the callousing secret for maximum success. If you want an endless supply of grapevines without spending another dime, here's the propagation secret that serious growers use: callousing. What it is: every winter when you prune, save the best cuttings. Bundle 10 or 15 cuttings together with a rubber band, label them by variety, and bury them in a shallow trench or a bucket of damp sand. You want to keep them cold and moist, but not frozen, basically simulating late winter conditions. The magic: this process encourages the cut ends to begin forming root tissue before you even plant them. It's like giving them a head start. The payoff? In early spring, when you pull out your cuttings, you'll see a white, lumpy callus forming on the bottom end. That's root tissue beginning to develop. Plant these calloused cuttings in pots or directly in the ground, and your success rate will be dramatically higher than with fresh cuttings. You'll end up with more rooted vines than you know what to do with. You can plant them throughout your property, give them to friends and neighbors, or even start selling them. That's everything you need to know about growing an endless supply of grapes. We covered variety selection for your specific climate, the multiplication secret that lets you create unlimited vines for free, the 90% pruning rule that most people are too scared to follow, and the structure methods that guarantee a productive harvest. If you found this helpful, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd subscribe and hit that bell icon. It helps me keep making these videos for you. And I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. What grape varieties are you growing, or what varieties are you thinking about trying? What's your biggest challenge with grapes? Drop your questions below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks so much for watching. Now go plant something amazing. I'll see you in the next video.